About a year ago, I switched over from using my dusty but trustworthy 24-bit Zoom H4n recorder to a much smaller 32-bit float Zoom F3 recorder. Though I did love my Zoom H4n, it definitely came with a set of inherent limitations. But now with the Zoom F3 and its 32-bit float format, all of those problems and limitations are totally gone. And that is for one major reason: no longer having to set recording levels. Now you may be thinking to yourself, what's so wrong with having to set the levels before recording? Though musicians and video editors typically have a controlled environment where they can approximate how loud their subject will be, I record various sound effects with all kinds of different items at different distances from the microphone, and when I was using my 24-bit recorder to capture these samples, instead of spending my time in creativity, I was spending it testing the levels, and then on top of that, re-recording samples that should have been totally fine, especially when I was working with items that were very close up to the microphone. A simple movement of a few inches can make a huge difference in that amplitude. 32-bit float files are nearly impossible to peak because we have so much dynamic range in amplitude. When you're working with a standard 24-bit recorder, you typically have right around 144 decibels in dynamic range. But when I'm recording on a 32-bit float recorder, I have over 1,000 decibels of dynamic range. And there's not a single scenario that you're going to experience that goes above 150, maybe even 200 decibels. With the H4n, obviously I was changing my preamp levels a lot, but now 90% of the time I just have the preamp sitting right around plus 256. Now, something that's worth noting when you're working with this 32-bit format is that when you drag these sound files into your DAW, they are all going to appear to be peaking like crazy. But the difference here is if you tried to turn down a 24-bit file, none of that data would be there. All of those peaks are completely cut off. But when you turn down the volume on a 32-bit float file, all of those super high peaks that were out of view come back down into view because you had that extra dynamic range. That ceiling that you used to have is no longer there. Because the 24-bit dynamic range still sets the loudness limitations for all of the industry standards, including streaming and broadcast, you're still going to want to pull that amplitude down. Though that high dynamic range works as a great cushion when you're out recording in the field, if those meters are in the red, when you export it, it's all going to fall apart. It is extremely rare for 32-bit float to be used as a delivery format. In fact, I can't even think of a single case in which somebody has used it for that. Now, I know that a fair amount of you will watch this video and be like, okay, well, I'm still comfortable with my 24-bit recorder, but I just wanted to take a moment to put emphasis on how much this format can actually help you if you do any type of field recording or sound effects. If you like this video or like free sound effects in general, you can support this channel by leaving a super thanks or by a monthly donation on Patreon. I just want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy all of my other content.